Everyone, welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host JT. Glad that you guys are tuned in on this wonderful Friday afternoon, man. It's always great when it's a Friday afternoon, man. You get to think about what you're going to do on your weekend, how you're going to spend your weekend with your family and friends. And I got a really exciting episode for you guys. We're continuing our training camp previews. We already did the AFC North. Make sure that you guys go ahead and check out that episode. And also, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we go live every day at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. And if you haven't already, make sure that you go ahead, listen to the audio version of the JT Sports Podcast. We're not just available on YouTube. You can find us on all audio platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. If you enjoy, it's a free way to support the channel. And plus, you can give your video suggestions, what you would like to see on the channel, answer some of your questions that you guys leave in the reviews as well. So I'll probably have them on a future episode. Make sure to go ahead, give us a 5-star review. AFC West training camp previews, going to be telling you guys everything that you guys need to know about all 4 teams in this division going into training camp this year. Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers. And let's start off talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. So for the Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions going into training camp this year, we all got to keep our eyes out on left tackle Donovan Smith. Because Donovan Smith, he was not looking good last year. And you know, Donovan Smith, he's not terrible. Like, he had some pretty solid years at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was just down all around last year. So hopefully he can probably bounce back with the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs have a really good offensive line coach. They have a really good coaching staff. So I feel like they can get Donovan Smith playing at a serviceable level. But if they can't, I think they're going to be a little bit in trouble. Now, they did draft a offensive tackle named Wyatt Morris in the 3rd round out of Oklahoma. Now, he can play both tackle spots, so he's pretty much considered a swing tackle. And he has a lot of upside, but he's more of a developmental project right now as a rookie. So if he ends up starting at left tackle, then he has to end up being really good. And then you got Louis Niang. Now, he was a 3rd round pick in 2020, and he started a couple of games in 2021, if I remember correctly. And then he ended up having a injury that he was still trying to get back from last year. So interested to see how this left tackle situation goes for Kansas City. Donovan Smith, he's one of those guys, like, you don't really know what you're going to expect from him. You just kind of banking on the fact that Kansas City has really good coaching. Now, they kind of got a position battle at cornerback, and it's not a bad position battle. Normally it's because one guy played bad, but both of these guys played pretty well as rookies. So we already know about L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, but who's going to be that other cornerback on the other side of L'Jarius Sneed? Now, Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams, both of these guys got significant playing times as rookies. Now, you know, the young rookie cornerbacks that everybody was kind of raving about last year for Kansas City in the playoffs. Well, these were the 2 guys that everybody was talking about, and they had some big plays and a lot of big moments for Kansas City. Now, they were a little bit up and down at times, but they were still pretty solid to be rookie cornerbacks. So those 2 guys are going to be slugging it out to see who's going to have the right to be that 3rd cornerback on this roster behind McDuffie and Sneed. So you need to keep your eyes on that one. That's going to be a really good one. Now, Jalen Watson got more playing time, but it's not like Joshua Williams wasn't getting significant playing time as well. So they was getting rotated in and out at times, but you need to look out for that position battle for Kansas City. And then what is the wide receiver position going to look like for the Chiefs this year? Okay, now you lost Juju Smith-Schuster, which people like to try to downplay Juju Smith-Schuster like he's a bum, like he's not good. But you got to remember, didn't he lead Kansas City in receiving yards and their Super Bowl win over the Eagles this past year? Come on, man.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
Give the man Juju Smith-Schuster some props. So you lose Juju Smith-Schuster, now you need somebody else to really take over. And one thing about Juju Smith-Schuster, he may not have been the best, but he was really consistent. He was pretty dependable. Now you do have MVS coming back, and MVS was pretty good last season. He kind of exceeded my expectations. So you know what you have at him. But who else is going to step up behind him? Who's going to be your true wide receiver one? Is it going to be Kadarius Toney? Kadarius Toney probably is the most talented receiver that they have on their team. This dude set the New York Giants rookie record in receiving yards in the game. When he's healthy and he's on the field, he's a monster. And he was trying to learn the offense, but Kansas City was still finding ways to get him involved. He had a big return in the Super Bowl this past year. And he's somebody that if you can give him the ball out in space, like, it's not going to be too many people that really are going to be able to tackle this man in the open field, because this dude is the human definition of a human joystick, or, yeah, what they would call a human joystick, man, because this dude is really sticky. This man has incredible footwork. He has quick feet. He's really agile. He's just really slippery, too. And also, he's a little bit tough, too, despite his size. So, Kadarius Toney, you give him the ball in the open field, he's going to be a nightmare for opposing secondaries. And the thing with him is, can he just stay healthy and, you know, can he make good decisions and not get himself in trouble off the field? So Kadarius Toney is definitely a receiver that a lot of people have brought up a lot when it comes to people who could have a breakout season. But, you know, we know about Sky Moore. You got rookie Rashee Rice, who I don't really know about, but the guy who I think people are kind of sleeping on, and I'm hoping that he ends up panning out, is Justin Ross. Now, a lot of people was hyping up Justin Ross because, you know, he went undrafted last year, and the fact that this was somebody who was a projected first-round talent, and then he had that spinal injury that he had to miss a year for Clemson, and then he came back, and he was held back by the fact that, you know, Clemson didn't really have a good offense or great quarterback play, and then he goes undrafted because people have concerns with his medicals. And then, you know, like, when he gets to Kansas City, he ends up signing a pretty lucrative deal to be an undrafted free agent. And then he ends up making some really big plays during OTAs and mini camps. Like, there were several videos I remember of Kansas City posting during their mini camp sessions of Justin Ross making a lot of great plays. So it's interesting to see what Justin Ross is going to be this year, if he's even going to end up making the roster, because if he doesn't end the roster, well, if he doesn't end up making the roster, it's going to be really tough, man. Like, I can't really see him not making the roster unless, you know, he was just a little bit overhyped, or maybe the fact that he's coming off another injury. Maybe he's just going to be one of those players that just struggles to stay healthy. But it's like, you know, the talent most definitely is there. He was making plays last year. And then, you know, they already bring in Richie James, which Richie James, I thought he was pretty solid for the New York Giants at times. He did come through for them boys in a couple of big moments. So I think the receiving core has a lot of talent. It's just, you know, like, it's just a lot of unproven talent right now. And training camp is definitely going to be the proving ground for where those guys end up proving themselves. Now, players that I'm going to be watching outside of the receivers that I mentioned, I got to look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire, man. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, man, it's not looking good for him right now. Isaiah Pacheco has already overcome him on the depth chart. And then you got the fact that Jared McKinnon's going to be back. So it's like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's not really able to stay healthy. It's like, even when he's on the field, it's like, he really ain't all that great. And it's like, I don't know, maybe if he doesn't do good during training camp this year, maybe he could end up getting released. But I don't really know, because it's like, he needs to show something. And it's like he's going to have a lot of opportunities to prove himself during the preseason, because I don't really think that Isaiah Pacheco and Jared McKinnon are going to get as many carries. And honestly, like, I feel like they could probably put him in a situation where he gets a bulk load of work in the preseason, bro, because he has to prove himself. This man was a former first-round pick, and he hasn't played like it at all. Now, he's been okay at times, but, you know, when you draft somebody in the first round, you're expecting somebody to be really good, and he's not really good. He's been kind of average at best, so he needs to kind of prove himself during training camp. And that's about it for the Kansas City Chiefs, man. So let me know what you guys are going to be looking at for the Kansas City Chiefs throughout training camp. What are going to be some positions that you're looking at, some key players that you're going to be looking at that I might not have touched on during this. The LA Chargers, man, this team has some huge expectations going into the 2023 NFL season, man. And when you look at the fact that they drafted Quentin Johnston in the first round, and you got Kellen Moore as your offensive coordinator, that lets you know everything that you need to know about what this offense is going to be this year. Justin Herbert isn't going to be throwing checkdowns anymore in a conservative offense. Kellen Moore is going to let him throw that thing downfield. And you got Quentin Johnston, who, according to some reports, has already beat out Joshua Palmer for the wide receiver 3 spot. So throughout training camp, we're probably going to see if the hype is real, because you already know how it be with all these rookies. Like, I don't really be seeing too many negative articles about these rookies on social media. Like, everybody's looking like a future Hall of Famer according to the reports we be seeing about these rookies throughout minicamp. But training camp is really where we're going to start to see what receivers are going to start getting weaved out. Because, you know, when them pads get put on, that's where, you know, the real football is played. That's where you get to see who the real football players is. So we're going to be seeing about Quentin Johnston, how he is able to keep up this hype and attention throughout training camp, and then see if he can make some plays in the preseason. Now, I do like Quentin Johnston a lot, but, you know, at the same time, I still want to see, you know, if he's going to be the hype, and if he's going to be worth up to that first round billing that the Chargers drafted. So next up at running back, you got Austin Eckler. But it's like, who else is going to be running back 2 behind him? So we're going to have to see how that's going to turn out. And then we got to talk about this position battle. So they got a free safety battle with a guy named Gilman. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name at all, versus JT Woods. Now, Gilman started a couple of games for the Chargers last year, and a lot of fans really like what they saw from him, and they're really confident that he's going to be able to come in and replace Nazir Adderley. And even if Nazir Adderley never would have retired, and if they would have brought him back, from the way they make it seem like they was going to have a position battle this offseason to determine who was going to be the starter at that position anyway. So this is somebody that the coaching staff really likes. They got confidence in, but they do have JT Woods, who's going into his second season. He was drafted in the 3rd round out of Baylor, and he started 1 game last year, but he still needs a lot of work. And he didn't really get a lot of reps last year anyway. So it's probably going to be Gilman's job to lose, unless JT Woods just goes crazy and, you know, maybe Gilman goes down with an injury that he has to sit out for a large portion of camp, and JT Woods just runs away with the job. Now, who's going to be wide receiver 3 and 4? Because, I mean, Quentin Johnston, if these minicamp reports are actually accurate, is actually going crazy right now, and he's already jumped over Joshua Palmer. So if that is true, what's going to happen with Jalen Guyton and Joshua Palmer? Now, Jalen Guyton missed most of last season with a torn ACL injury, which was unfortunate to him, because Joshua Palmer was really good when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen weren't on the field, and when they was missing time with injuries. And he was really consistent, and he was really good, because I was playing against one of my friends who had him on his fantasy football roster in the championship. So he's a pretty productive wide receiver. He'll probably end up being the wide receiver 4. And for Jalen Guyton, you know, he might end up trying to fight for his spot on the roster potentially if he doesn't really have a good showing in training camp this year. Man, I can't believe I called Mike Williams Mike Evans, man. My bad. Like, I can't believe I did that. It's crazy. Now, we got to look at how the offensive line depth is going to play out during training camp, because you guys already know the LA Chargers had hella injuries on the offensive line. It was like injury after injury after injury, like after injury. Like, I don't know how they made it to the playoffs with all those injuries on the offensive line. Like, they had Storm Norton as one of their starting offensive tackles, man. And he was one of the worst offensive tackles in the NFL last season, according to Pro Football Focus and a lot of metrics that I've been looking at. And, you know, basically if Storm Norton was starting at offensive tackle for you, good luck, because you was going to need it, man. Because the way some of these sites were talking about him, Storm Norton was not good. And I think he's with the Saints now. So, woo. So you got to see how your right tackle position is going to look. And then also the fact that, you know, you got a lot of guys coming back from injury, so they're going to have to get back into building that chemistry, that communication with each other. And then hopefully you got good depth behind your starters. So if, unfortunately, you have another injury on the offensive line, you have some good players that can come in and at least be serviceable and not as bad as what it was last year. I don't know how they made it to the playoffs. Now, my players to watch for the Chargers throughout training camp, Kenneth Murray, man. Like, man, like, I had high expectations for Kenneth Murray when he was coming out of Oklahoma, man. Like, come on, if you're a Chargers fan, you gotta be honest. How you feeling about Kenneth Murray right now? Like, is it fair to say, you know, he's the BUST? Like, is it safe to use that word? Or is it a little bit too soon? You still holding out hope? Because, I mean, I thought Kenneth Murray was going to be a lot better than what he's shown right now. And he's not really great in coverage at all. So it's like, in training camp, it's like you kind of want to see, you know, a lot of good things out of him. You're hoping that he can end up putting it all together. I mean, the athleticism is still there, but it's like, you know, this dude is a former first-round pick. And if he doesn't end up popping off this year, it probably could be it for him as far as him being an LA Charger. I don't know. And then you got to look at the fact that at cornerback, you have J.C. Jackson. Depending on how he goes with his health and whatnot, hopefully we get to see what he can do in training camp. Because before he went down with that injury, oh my God, things were not looking good for him. It was looking like the LA Chargers got a really big whiff at free agency with him. So hopefully he can get back healthy and we can see him in training camp a little bit and we can see what he can do. Because, I mean, I don't know how you just fall off like that unless, you know, you was really getting hidden by the system. I mean, Jesus. But I think J.C. Jackson can bounce back. Like, I like J.C. Jackson and I actually like his story. So he seems like one of those guys who's capable of being able to bounce back. Like, I don't think he's going to be one of those guys to just be terrible, but hopefully he can go in training camp and we can see what he's capable of. Now, I'm going to be paying attention to Max Duggan. Now, the only reason I'm really paying attention to Max Duggan is because, like, Max Duggan is one of those guys that, even though people may look at him and say, oh, he's not all that good, he's one of those people that put in the work. He's a scrappy quarterback. He's a fighter. He's a tough guy. So he's going to be one of those guys that's just going to be able to stick around, I just think, some way, somehow. And plus, he's probably a good guy that you want in your locker room. So I want to see how he's going to look in preseason, how he's going to look in training camp, because he is going to get opportunities right now. And he probably could compete with Easton Stick for the second quarterback job behind Justin Herbert. So I really like Max Duggan. This dude started out last year around this time as the backup, and then the starter ended up getting hurt, and then he ended up putting up a Heisman season, and he wasn't bad. I mean, he does have some really good mobility, and like I said, he's one of those guys that puts in a lot of work. He's going to be one of the first guys in, last guy out. So I want to see what he's going to show throughout training camp in the preseason for the LA Chargers. I think he's going to be one of those Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of guys that just finds a way to stick around, and he'll just be like a journeyman, like a fringe backup kind of guy, but sometimes he'll come in and give you a spark because he do work hard, and the league isn't always about talent. Sometimes it's also about guys who show intangibles. Shoot, look at Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant from last year. Let's talk about the Denver Broncos. Going into training camp, oh man, I ain't even paying attention, man. Tripping. Denver Broncos, training camp battles, key players to watch. What do you need to know about the Denver Broncos with training camp just around the corner? Now, you got Sean Payton coming in, and apparently he's changing a lot of things. Okay, he's in there telling Rusell Wilson, hey man, you need to get back to doing what you were doing best, running the football apparently. He also is trying to figure out who's going to be his starting center this year. Now, he hasn't committed to Lloyd Cushenberry. Now, Lloyd Cushenberry probably is their best center on the roster, so I don't know, maybe he ends up seeing something in Alex Forsyth, who was a 7th round draft pick by the Broncos out of Oregon, and he was pretty solid at Oregon. He got better every single season, and Oregon does produce really good offensive linemen, and he has some medical concerns that made his draft stock fall a little bit. So he was somebody who was really solid for the Ducks last season. He gave up no sacks. He was one of the highest graded offensive linemen in the Pac-12 by Pro Football Focus. So maybe Sean Payton thinks like he could end up pushing Lloyd Cushenberry. They got a guy named Kyle Fuller who they signed in free agency. He was a backup center for Seattle, although he played some games. But Lloyd Cushenberry probably will end up winning the job. But maybe Alex Forsyth could surprise. Now, we got to figure out who's going to be their third defensive lineman behind Zach Allen and Mike Purcell. Now, Zach Allen was a fantastic pickup by the Denver Broncos in free agency. Like, I was trying to figure out where he got signed. I was trying to figure out, you know, who picked him up, because nobody really reported on the news about Zach Allen. And he was one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFC last year. And J.J. Watt had a really good season for Arizona, but a lot of people were sleeping on Zach Allen. So, Zach Allen, I think he's going to be really good. They are really high on DJ Jones, but you also got to look at a guy like Matt Henningsen. So he's going to be competing. You got Urzaki. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And both of these guys do things that mirror one another, but don't mirror one another. So it's like one's good against the run, but the other one isn't good against the run, but he's good against the pass. So those guys are going to have to become a little bit more consistent. They're going to have to try to find somebody who can do a little bit of both. Now, players that I'm going to be watching, linebacker Drew Sanders was one of my favorite players to watch in college football last year. This dude is a free linebacker. He can play edge and he can play linebacker. I think that he has elite athleticism. I mean, this guy is a machine, man. Like, you got to see Drew Sanders play. And you got to remember that this dude was somebody who they picked up from the transfer portal, man. So you watch his film, this dude was really hyperactive. He was one of those dudes that even if he wasn't in on the play, he was always in the proximity. So I really love Drew Sanders. I want to see what he does throughout training camp. I think he was one of the more slept on players coming out in the draft. And I haven't really been seeing a lot of people talking about Drew Sanders. Like, we all been seeing these hype videos about Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud and all these other rookies, but nobody really talking about my guy, Drew Sanders. Now, what's up with KJ Hamler? Man, like, KJ Hamler got to show us something, man. He does. This man has so much hype coming out of that 2020 NFL draft. Everybody was saying that it was going to be a steal, myself included, and he hasn't really been all that great, even when he has been able to stay healthy. And the Saints picked up Marquez Callaway. Now, Marquez Callaway and Sean Payton got some history. Now, I don't know what the hell happened to Marquez Callaway last year with the New Orleans Saints, but I guess they just forgot about him. I don't know how they forgot about him, because New Orleans in their final season when they had Sean Payton, Marquez Callaway was his best receiver. And you got to remember, in 2021, the Saints had arguably the worst receiving core in the NFL. And Marquez Callaway was their best receiver. So him in Denver is going to be really interesting. I think he's a really good fit in Sean Payton's scheme. And lastly, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on Rusell Wilson. Now, Rusell Wilson has lost some weight. He's changed some things around. And he's highly motivated this year. And I was listening to an episode of I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall and Marshawn Lynch. And, you know, Marshawn Lynch is one of those guys that he's going to keep it real with you. He's going to let you know if somebody's trash or if somebody can actually play. And he's going to tell you a little bit of the truth about them without them making him out to look really bad. So when he was asked about Rusell Wilson, like, he was real. He said Rusell Wilson, he's a little bit, personality-wise, he's not an awful person, because he said one thing about Rusell Wilson, and Marshawn Lynch did say these. You can look up the I Am Athlete podcast with Marshawn Lynch and you can watch it for yourself, but he pretty much said that Rusell Wilson, he will pick him to be the starting quarterback for him if he was the one building the team, because he said Rusell Wilson, one thing about him that you always knew is that he was always going to be somebody who always was going to put in the work. He was going to be dedicated, and then he could play. So I expect him to be able to bounce back. If Marshawn Lynch feel like Rusell Wilson can still play, I feel like Rusell Wilson can still play. And I'm not basing my analysis solely based on Marshawn Lynch comments, but at the same time, you got to remember that Nathaniel Hackett was a bad head coach. And remember last season, I told y'all that Nathaniel Hackett wasn't going to work out. He wasn't somebody that was even a good offensive coordinator the years that he called plays. So you got Sean Payton. And Sean Payton is going to be able to rejuvenate Rusell Wilson. But at the same time, we can hope that, but we got to see it throughout training camp. Now, the Broncos should have a really good secondary. So their secondary, matching up against this receiving core in training camp, is going to be really interesting. Jerry Jeudy, I think this is the year with Rusell Wilson, if he ends up bouncing back, that Jerry Jeudy ends up going off. You got to remember that Jerry Jeudy is not a bust. This dude isn't somebody who can't play, man. Like, Jerry Jeudy is somebody who's just been held back by bad quarterback play. Because I promise you, if Jerry Jeudy would have been playing with a guy like Joe Burrow last season or Josh Allen, he probably would have went for over 1,000 yards. So do not sleep on Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is one of the best route runners in the NFL. So keep your eyes on Jerry Jeudy, man. Like, this man is so underrated, and I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on him going into this season, man. Like, I done picked him up on a handful of fantasy football teams, him and Calvin Ridley. I better make sure that y'all keep up with Jerry Jeudy. But this is it for my Denver Broncos training camp battles. Let me know some players that you guys are going to be watching down in the comment section. And also, if you haven't already, make sure that you hit that like button, man, for the YouTube algorithm. You got to hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm, man. And plus, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Why haven't you subscribed to the channel yet, man? Like, we got some of the best in-depth NFL college football content that you're going to find. And we're going to get back talking about the XFL, man, because I kind of forgot about the XFL. But make sure that you guys go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we go live every single day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And give us a 5-star review. If you support the channel and you want to know how can you support us, all you got to do is give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify, man. Like, it only takes 3 seconds. All you got to do is go to Apple, Spotify, check out the JT Sports Podcast, type it in, and it should pop up. Or you can go down to the description, scroll down below a little bit, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. Go ahead, give us a 5-star review if you are enjoying this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. The Las Vegas Raiders, man.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
this franchise is not heading in the right direction, man. Now, going into training camp, the biggest storyline is Josh Jacobs. Now, right now, at the time this is being recorded, it is currently July 14th. Now, the 17th is just around the corner, and that's a really, really special day. Now, I don't know if Josh Jacobs ends up not signing that franchise tag, man. Like, I don't know, but I kind of have a little bit of optimism that the Raiders might end up paying him. I just don't see how they can let Josh Jacobs walk out of the building without paying him, but that's a story to keep up with going into training camp for the Las Vegas Raiders, their biggest one. And then they got a position battle at right guard. Now, you got Alex Bars, who was a veteran who started 14 games for them last year, and he wasn't really that good. And he started a couple of games for the Chicago Bears in the past. You also got a 6th-rounder who was a former selection by the Denver Broncos. He started 3 games for Denver in 2021, and then they let him go last season. He had an injury. And then you got Greg Van Roten, who I think has the chance to end up winning this job. He probably would be the person who I would have the most confidence in starting this year, only because, like, he's played for, like, hella teams. He's played for the Packers, the Jets, the Bills, and he started a few games for the Bills last season, and he's still pretty solid, although, like, he's really up there in age a little bit, but I think he's probably a better option. Maybe you end up putting Alex Burns back there again. I don't know, but I kind of would go with Greg Van Roten. And then they also got an undrafted guy named Darren Wagner, who was an undrafted free agent out of Arkansas. Now, at cornerback, I want to see how this position is going to play out behind Nate Hobbs and Duke Shelley. Now, Duke Shelley, I think, was kind of an underrated free agency signing, so I think he's going to be one of these guys who should work out regardless of how this season goes for the Las Vegas Raiders. So if they come in with an entirely new coaching staff next year, I expect Duke Shelley to still be on the roster because he had a good year this year. And I love Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs is probably one of the best draft picks that the Las Vegas Raiders have made in the NFL drafts over the last couple of years, outside of Max Crosby and Josh Jacobs. Now, what are we going to be looking at outside of those guys? Now, they signed David Long. I don't really like David Long all that much, even though he did put up a couple of big moments for the LA Rams during their Super Bowl run when his jersey number was called on. But I don't really know if you could trust him to be one of your full-time starting cornerbacks on the outside. Now, Amik Robertson, I don't feel like he was that bad last year. I definitely feel like he's those guys who still is a work in progress, but I still think that he's a pretty okay option. Yeah, you probably could do a little bit better, but I kind of want to see how that's going to play out in training camp between Amik Robertson and David Long Jr., who they signed in free agency. Now, the interior defensive line, Jerry Tillery, when they picked him up last season, he came in and he was pretty good. He was pretty good. I ain't gonna lie. Like, as much as I like the joke on the the Las Vegas Raiders, like, Jerry Tillery, when they picked him up, I thought it was like a mean move, but he ended up actually being pretty good. Like, I thought he was just, one of those guys who they just pick up because he was a former first-round pick, and he ends up still not working out, but he was pretty good for the Raiders this year. You pretty much should pencil him in as a starter, but Bilal Nichols, he was somebody who a lot of Raiders fans were hyping up a lot going in to training camp last year, and everybody was saying, man, like, Bilal Nichols, like, you got to watch out for him, and he didn't really do anything at all last season. Neil Farrell behind him. Now, I do like Byron Young. Now, Byron Young, like, he was going on for Tennessee. This dude is an athletic freak, and I really feel like he was somebody who was a little slept on. I kind of feel like he could have been a late first round, early second round guy, and they got him in the third. And I really feel like he's a guy who could really flash in training camp, especially with the fact that the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line really isn't all that good. And I really think he's somebody who I think has really good pass rush upside. So I want to see what Byron Young is going to do throughout training camp. I feel like some people are kind of sleeping on him. This dude is a really good athlete, and he was one of those players that when you watch Tennessee's defense, that really stood out. And their defense wasn't really all that great, but they had some really good moments when they started going off. And Byron Young had some really good games when this defense actually was playing at a really high level. So go and kind of look back at some Byron Young film, or even just check out some highlights. Just get a little quip to Byron Young and the upside that he kind of has. So I think he's somebody who could kind of end up showing out for the Las Vegas Raiders this year. Now, if this whole Josh Jacobs thing doesn't end up going right, and he ends up, not signing the franchise tag tender, or they don't end up giving him a new contract, then it's going to be really sad. Raiders Nation is going to be really hurt, and then they're going to have to figure out who's going to end up replacing him. Now, I like Zamir White. Now, I don't know how y'all feel about Zamir White, but when Zamir White was playing for Georgia, and I watched a lot of SEC football, he was a tank. And when the Las Vegas Raiders picked him up, the first thing that popped into my head was he's going to be Josh Jacobs' replacement. Even though, I don't think any of us foresaw, this season, playing out how it did, and Josh Jacobs leading the NFL in rushing. But you look at Zamir White, very powerful back, really athletic in my opinion. Zamir White, I feel like could kind of end up taking over this job, because who else do they have over him, really? I mean, Amir Abdullah? Yeah, Amir Abdullah. I don't really know how I feel about him. Brandon Bolden as your RB1 in 2023? I don't know. That seems a little crazy, doesn't it? Brandon Bolden? I don't know. I like Zamir White if Josh Jacobs doesn't play this year. So it's Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden. I don't know about that. I like Zamir White. Now, players to watch. Man, I ain't gonna hold you. I'm still hoping that O.J. Howard can really get an opportunity to show what he can do as a starting tight end. Now, I know some of y'all may be like, JT, you still hoping on O.J. Howard? Yes, I am. I'm hoping that O.J. Howard can really get an opportunity, because people forget, it wasn't like O.J. Howard couldn't play. O.J. Howard just couldn't stay healthy. And y'all in the chat, let me know if I'm tripping, but O.J. Howard, his first couple of years in the league, when he was healthy, he was really solid, really good. And he was one of the more athletically gifted tight ends in the league during that period. So I'm kind of interested to see what O.J. Howard can do with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I know they do got Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, and he's pretty good. And then they also have Austin Hooper. But it's I really want to see what O.J. Howard can do. Now, I thought, when he was with the Buffalo Bills, he might have done a little something, but I don't know. They had Dawson Knox, who was really good. So I didn't really know about him, honestly. So I'm interested in seeing what O.J. Howard does. Divine Diablo. Now, this guy has improved a lot. He's gained more weight. He's been given some more responsibilities on the defense. He's athletically gifted linebacker because he was a former safety. So I think he may end up being one of those guys who could end up breaking out this year. Of course, we got to watch Tyree Wilson. He's somebody who has a lot of athleticism, but he wasn't the most polished, and he kind of was a risky pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know why I want to call y'all the LA Raiders, but he was a risky pick for y'all, so I don't really know if he's going to end up panning out, but we'll see. But this is it for my Las Vegas Raiders training camp preview. Let me know some things that I missed down in the comment section down below. Let me know some things that you guys are going to be watching, some position battles that you're going to be looking out for. And this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Remember that we are going live tonight with Big Cat, Panthers Uncensored, He's going to be on tonight on JT Sports After Dark at 10 p.m. Eastern. So make sure that you guys go ahead, click that pin link, and make sure that you go on to hit reminders so you get notified when we go live tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern time. If you haven't already, make sure that you like the live stream, subscribe to the channel, because we go live every day on Mondays through Fridays. And make sure that you leave us with a 5-star review. We're trying to get to 100 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify season before the college football and NFL seasons kick off. So go ahead, give us a 5-star review. All you got to do is type in JT Sports Podcast on any podcasting service that you use, and it should pop up. Or you can go down to the description down below, scroll down a little bit, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tonight, 10:30 p.m. or